So the mark of the beast it's open to interpretation depending on how you want to read that scripture, but most evangelicals have interpreted it saying there's going to be some sort of physical manifestation that you are aligned with the Antichrist.
We're talking about the end times, which some evangelical Christians believe are now.
Things like the tribulation, things like the rapture, things like the Antichrist. All those concepts are found in the book of Revelation. Unfortunately, the book of Revelation is written more in allegories and figurative language and metaphors. So we can have 5 different Christians read the book of Revelation and come out with 5 completely different understandings of how the world's going to end.
So then very specifically then, what is the mark of the beast itself? Because I know that 666 is the number of the beast, but then what is the mark of the beast?
So that has been interpreted a whole bunch of different ways. Things like a tattoo potentially, or even a style of dress or a haircut. Or in the case of what we have going on right now, a vaccine with a microchip in it could be all the mark of the beast. They see it as a way to track you, essentially, and say you're with this group or you're with that group.
These interpretations can have very real consequences even for non-believers. In January, 44% of white evangelicals say they'd probably or definitely not get the vaccine.
A year ago is when the COVID lockdown began. And for most states, that lockdown was we're going to stop everyone from meeting, including restaurants, stadiums, bars, and churches. And when the churches began to lock down, a lot of evangelical pastors said, this is evidence of the government taking over. And then they found a magical vaccine less than a year after we found coronavirus. But you know what they're going to do? They're going to use that as a way to track you as a Christian. So if you think about it in that transition, it makes perfect sense that this is all sort of a conspiracy perpetuated by the government to weaken the church. And then when the church is weak, use that as a means to control people by giving them this microchip and this mark of the beast.
Okay, that does seem like it flows logically. However, it doesn't flow logically at all.
Yes, that's the thing about conspiracy theories. Once you jump into them, they make perfect sense. But that first step is the hardest step, right? A lot of Christians, though, engage in lots of conspiracy thinking. And if you think about what evangelicals believe, I mean, all religion at some level is a belief in magical thinking. Mm-hmm. Whether it be Muslim or a Christian or a Jew, you have to believe in something supernatural that goes beyond understanding of science and reason and logic. So once you make that jump, it becomes easier to believe things that are irrational and illogical too.
So that must make this even harder to dispel, this conspiracy theory that the vaccine is somehow the mark of the beast, because there are authoritative institutions, the church, that might be telling people that this is the case.
Yeah, it's a humongous problem because everyone now is skeptical of everything except people who are close to them. We're skeptical of the media, we're skeptical of even social media, but we're not skeptical of our pastors. And we know there's tons of data now that says that Americans are skeptical of authority far away, but they're not as skeptical of authority that's close to them. So pastors are not correcting these wrong thinkings, and that I think is also perpetuating it as much, if not more, than them actively peddling in conspiracy theories.
This is the kind of thing you'd think that older people might be into more, but there's been a proliferation, as I understand it, of a lot of TikTokers, like kids, perpetuating this conspiracy theory that the vaccine is the number of the beast. What's up with that?
So young people want the clicks, and young people, they're opportunistic. Preachers are the same way. They want to grow their flocks just like TikTokers want to grow their followings. And saying things that are more outlandish more often than not gets you those views, likes, retweets. And if you're a pastor, more people in the pews, more money in the collection plate, and a larger church presence nationally, right? What makes it even more treacherous for a lot of evangelicals is it's the government making these marks on you.
And as out there as today's vaccine claims may seem to some, it's not the first time there's been fear about the US government branding people with the mark of the beast.
So my favorite example is the Social Security Commission. When they created Social Security back in the 1930s during the Great Depression, they actually had an entire meeting where they tried to figure out a way to make sure that evangelicals were not afraid of getting a Social Security number. They actually created these guards to make sure that no American would get a Social Security number that had 666 back to back. Because if you got that, then you got the mark of the beast from the government.
This kind of thing has been going on for centuries, but it does feel like a crisis, which is to say if a ton of people start believing that the vaccine is the mark of the beast, then we're kind of in trouble here. And as an evangelical pastor yourself, as someone who's part of the church, what do you do about it?
I am actively telling my congregation to get vaccinated. In our bulletin, I said you should get the vaccine. Here's why. Here's the science behind why it's good for you, and it's a way to love your neighbor. That's why I try to tell them, like, if you believe in the gospel the way that I believe in the gospel, it's not just doing a kindness for you; it's doing a kindness for people around you.